hey yo hey ha. When hey yo when hey ho hey yo hey yo. When hey yo hey ha. When hey yo hey yo way yo hey no way yo hey. When hey yo hey ha. When hey yo when hey ho hey yo hey yo. When hey yo hey ha. When hey ho hey yo hey. When hey yo hey ha. When hey yo hey yo way ya hey no way ya hey. When hey yo hey ha. When hey yo when hey ho hey yo hey. When hey yo hey ha. When hey ho hey. When hey yo hey ha. When hey yo hey yo way no way yo hey. When hey yo hey ha. When hey yo when hey yo hey.
Hi, everyone. I'm Avery Willis Hoffman, Program Director at the Park Avenue Armory. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I'm joining you all from Brewster, New York, the occupied and unceded homeland of the Wappingers, the Munsee-speaking Delawares. I'm a mixed race woman with a brownish golden short curly hair, wearing red lipstick today, and a gold necklace and a beautiful blue top with colorful flowers. I am sitting in front of a blue wall with white empty shelves. Thank you so much, Josie. That was a beautiful welcome song entitled Deep Snow. All of our conversations are framed by our acknowledgement of the Native stewards of the lands on which we presently live. We pay respect to all their ancestors as well as present and future generations. We acknowledge that many Indigenous people continue to live and work on these lands, and we honor their ongoing contributions to our world. On behalf of Park Avenue Armory and the Metropolitan Museum of Art, I'm so pleased to welcome you all to our 100 Years, 100 Women Conversation series. This is the third episode of our series, and it's meant to be a casual lunchtime, at least on the East Coast, gathering of artists and participants to discuss the pressing topics and issues as part of the 100 Years, 100 Women project, which is our year-long response to the centennial of the 19th Amendment to the US Constitution, which, as many of you know, granted some, but not all women the right to vote. So please feel free to grab a beverage and some food and participate in our YouTube chat, post your questions there throughout the conversation. And many thanks to Gloria and to Kristen for the ASL interpretation today. So I'm going to turn it over now to Dr. Lisa Coleman, who is our host today from our partner NYU, for a few words of welcome and then on to the conversation.
Thank you so much, Avery. Good evening, good afternoon, good morning, wherever you are in the world. Thank you for being here with us today. Thank you for that wonderful welcome and opening. And thank you, of course, to the Park Armory and, of course, to Avery Willis Hoffman for your incredible work to host this important conversation series that has really centered the lives and experience and contributions and leadership of underrepresented women. My name is Dr. Lisa Coleman. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm the Senior Vice President for Global Inclusion and Strategic Innovation at New York University. I am joining you from Lower Manhattan in New York City, and I am on the unceded homeland of the Musqueam Lenape peoples. And we at NYU acknowledge that many of our sites and locations, because we're a global institution, are located on the unceded lands of Indigenous peoples. I'm an African-American woman with curly brown hair, oh my goodness, curly black hair. I am sitting with lights and I am wearing a black top with silver earrings. I have blush lipstick and I'm sitting on a corner near a wooden-like wall. The room is yellow and there's a picture of a woman behind me in the woods. Thank you to all of you who've joined for today's important and exciting conversation on art, disability, and advocacy. Before beginning our dialogue, I'd just like to thank our ASL interpreters and all those working behind the scenes whose labor is often unseen and undervalued. And of course, again, thank you to the Park Armory and of course to our stellar panel. And now I'd like to begin by asking our panelists to introduce themselves. And I will start with Christine.
Hi, everyone. I'm Christine Bruno. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I am coming to you today from the unceded land of the Lenape peoples on the Upper West Side of Manhattan. I am a white cisgendered woman, petite, with short brown curly hair. Today I'm wearing glasses and a black short sleeve dress. The dress has a little ruffle at the top collar and I'm also wearing a necklace. I'm sitting on a blue bench and behind me is a big burnt orange wall in my apartment. I identify as a disabled woman. Specifically, I have cerebral palsy, which is a mobility disability. I'm an actor, a teaching artist, and a disability equity consultant, specifically to arts and culture organizations and the entertainment industry. And I also like to, I'm stealing this phrase that I just heard a couple weeks ago from the amazing, legendary Andre DeShields, who refers to himself as a performing activist. And I'm so happy to be here.
Thank you very much, Christine. And now we will turn to Sophia.
Thank you, Lisa. Hi, everyone. My name is Sophia Cheyenne. Taigüe, that means good day in my native language. Taino, they are the indigenous people of the Caribbean, Dominican Republic, Puerto Rico, Cuba, and all the Lesser Antilles Islands. I use she, her pronouns. I'm a mixed race, cisgendered woman with dwarfism. I have long brown curly hair. Today I am wearing a white and blue floral top. It's got a little ruffle sleeve and my favorite dreamcatcher earrings. I'm sitting in front of a gray blank wall and I am zooming in from Hicksville, New York, the ancestral, traditional, and unceded land of the Merrick people, along with many Algonquin-speaking tribes that inhabited the suburbs of Long Island that we know today. And I too am an actor, teaching artist, and disability advocate consultant. Thank you so much for having me here today. I'm really excited for the conversation.
Thank you so much, Sophia. And now, Diane.
Hello, everyone. I'm Diana Elizabeth Jordan. I am coming in from the Gabrielino combination, the unceded land of the Gabrielino combination in Los Angeles, California. I am a Black disabled woman. I have short curly twists. My background is my blurry, messy apartment. I have a blur so you can't see it as big of a mess as it is. I'm sitting on a wooden chair that has a little bit of a round curve to it. I'm wearing a blue and white floral dress. I'm an actor, I'm a solo artist, a theater and filmmaker, and disability advocate and consultant. And I am really thrilled to be here to have this wonderful conversation with artists who I not only respect, but artists who are also my friends. And I can't wait to get into this important dialogue that we're having today. Oh, and my pronouns are she, her, and hers.
Thank you so much, Diana. Thank you all. So I'm excited to begin this conversation as an academic who focuses heavily on the role of arts, film, and disability inclusive culture related to, of course, intersectional libertarian movements. I find that that the role of art often plays a critical role in redefining and accelerating our progress. So and we've seen that even during this pandemic. So we'll get to some of that, I hope, and talk a little bit about some of the disparities, the joy, and the reimagining. So let's kick it off with our first question. And the first question is really, you've already told us a little bit about it yourselves, but you can tell us a little bit more, because what I'd like you to talk to us a little bit is how you came to choose your artistic medium or media. And let's see, I'll start. And each time, I'll just start with the different person. So this time I'll start with you, Sophia.
Sounds good. Thank you. This is Sophia speaking. I love this question because my journey has changed throughout my life. Now I call myself a multidisciplinary artist. I do many, many things. But I did start, practicing art through dance and through movement, which, looked a little different in my body in space. And really what it did, though, is it gave me a self-confidence and a very positive body image of myself through movement and through, finding how my body moves in space in a confident way. And I think it was definitely because of the people I was surrounded with that were so supportive and inclusive and included me in the dance numbers and in the competitions I did and all of those things. But today I'd say I'm primarily a theater maker or a storyteller. and that was through my journey in dance. I came to find musical theater and then went to actually study acting and getting my bachelor's of fine arts for my acting career. So yeah, and through all of that, learning what it means to be someone with dwarfism in this industry has been a challenge, but also every year, and because of people like Diana and Christine that I come across, every year I feel more empowered. And I just said this the other day that I feel more empowered and that I know that I belong in this industry as much as the industry tells me otherwise. So I'll leave it there.
Thank you so much, Sophia. Thank you for sharing that. And thank you for talking about movement and talking about movement in these spaces. And so I'll now go to Diana. Same question, a little bit about how you came to your medium.
I love that question. And I always like to say, I think it called me and then I called it because I don't remember when I didn't want to be an actor. I mean, I remember as a little girl, I would, because on TV, they did more of the opening credits where they would flash the actor's name, like Starry. I remember running around in my basement and I'd be like, oh God, starring Diana, and I'm dating myself, but I wrote the show, and so I was always, and even in school, I remember trying to make up assignments where it could be somehow we could act out the assignment, or I did a book report of Harriet Tubman once, because I don't think I ever didn't want to be an actor, and I also the aunt who died a year before I was born, who was an actor, my dad's sister, so I heard stories about her, certainly that journey has changed from my little girl actor who's like, ooh, I'm going to be a big star, to it becoming is a movement about activism. And it's a movement about, as I got older and heard, saw the attitudinal and barriers that was there as a African American disabled woman with who has cerebral palsy. I certainly knew became more aware of the barriers that I had to face and that I continue to face. But it's just something I've always wanted to do. But I think, to Sophia's point, I feel like I'm a multi-disciplined artist because I do produce, because I love directing. But it's not like I'm giving up. When I started directing it, I didn't give up acting. It's like I have two nephews. I love them both the same. So it's like all these artistic disciplines are all my babies, and I love them all. But certainly normalizing the disability experience. I love that. I love that phrase, normalizing the disability experience. That it's just a lived experience that we go through. I do think the arts is a powerful way to do that. So whether I'm on camera or directing or producing, my goal is to make sure that disability is an integral and visible part of the intersectional human experiences that we all go through.
Thank you so much, Diana. Thank you for that. And thank you for telling us a little bit about the arc of your journey, but also the importance of representation, to go back to what Sophia was talking about in terms of storytelling, et cetera. And I love I love this about all the babies. We want to keep all the babies. We love them all. Just, we got to navigate how that love gets, love gets distributed. So, and also, right, dreams can come true, right? Even our childhood dreams. So, all right, Christine, your next up, same question.
So I'm going to be brief because my story is very similar to my dear, dear friend, Diana. I don't ever remember a time where I didn't want to be a performer of some kind. Like, I feel like Diana said, it definitely was a calling. No one in my family, I mean, my grandmother did sing at church and that sort of thing, but I didn't really have it in my family. It's just in my blood, in my DNA. And it's interesting when people ask me that question, because I had a very traditional pathway, because there was no other pathway. So I sort of just busted down the doors and insisted that people see me and take me seriously, which I don't think I realized until later is not most people's path. And I'm thankful that I didn't know, that I didn't understand how much discrimination, how much ableism, how much the industry didn't want me there, right? I didn't really understand that until I already considered myself a trained professional. I have a master's in acting and directing, which is an interesting story in itself as to why the directing, although I, like Diana, also love directing. I'm also consider myself a multi-hyphenate. I actually started out thinking I was going to be a musical theater performer, because I'm a singer as well. But I sort of shifted to acting. Now I like to refer to myself as an actor who sings. Right. There's a difference, So yeah. And like Diana and Sophia's, I feel like the advocacy found me, and fairly recently, I'd say about 2005. So I had been working and acting and advocating for myself for years. But then I realized, as a professional, specifically living in New York and having gotten my master's in New York, that there was more that I could be doing to help my community and to make a difference. Like Diana says, if we don't see ourselves represented in the arts, whether it's as a writer, an actor, or director, then people are not going to know that we exist. And they're not going to know that the stories that they have been told and fed are not the authentic stories of disabled people. So much like all other marginalized communities, which is something that's even I identify as a straight white woman, but it's really important to me to always stress intersectionality when I'm speaking. Yeah, and I also am very involved in union advocacy, specifically for SAG-AFTRA.
Thank you so much, Christine. We're going to come back to some of those important points that you brought up, particularly around intersectionality, and then thinking about how that gets played out in this work. But I want to pick up on some of the things that actually all three of you sort of talked about, and that's really thinking about the role of art, right? And what we know is artists have keenly understood the social and transformative power of their work, right? And not bound by some of the other limitations of some of the other fields, if we think about that. And the space of imagination, right, is charged with innovation, new possibilities. And so if you all could really just talk to us briefly about how you use your art, right, in the sort of technology, method, or platform for change, as you all were talking about, right, sort of thinking about advocacy, activism, and advocating for change. And then specifically, what kinds of changes do you imagine might be right outcomes of the results? And you've talked about some of them, right? Sort of more visible. And of course, Diana talked about normalizing the experience, but if you could expound on that. And I think I'll start with Diana, and then I'll go to you, Christine, and then you, Sophia, just so you have an idea of the order. Okay, so Diana.
Yeah, that's a great question, because I think that expanding into the process with the pandemic has introduced the new class. I mean, this is a perfect example. I'm in Los Angeles. There's no way, unless, I would have been flown out, which is expense in a hotel. There's probably no way I could be a part of this conversation if it weren't for this platform. And not that there aren't other wonderful advocates in New York. There are. I mean, we're a strong force of fierce disabled artists, but the fact that I get to be a part of a platform that's taking place with the majority of the participants are on the East Coast is a perfect example of how we're discovering new platforms to get these messages out. And I think it is a continued discovery. I think panels like this are important just to have the conversation and to keep the conversation going. I've been doing this conversation for quite some time. And in a way, sometimes that gets frustrating, because Christine and I have known each other years, even though we're both still 29. We've known each other a long time. Yet we're having the same conversation. So in a way, I find that frustrating that I'm having the same conversation I had 25 years ago. But yet, I'm glad that we're still needing to have the conversation. Therefore, these platforms need to have them continue, and so that the next generation can join us. So I think about ongoing processes or have the art and the platform that be transformative. I do see changes, but sometimes I feel like 2 steps forward and 1 step back. But I also want to be brief, because Christine and Sophia had much to share, and I do want you to hear them impart their wisdom on us. So I'm gonna stop.
Thank you, Diana. Yeah, we're all still 29 in some ways. And Absolutely. And thanks for drawing our attention to the platforms, right? We at NYU we started working with Zoom on pronouns and actually and captioning and things early in the pandemic. So really thinking about those opportunities as new platforms present themselves. So thank you so much for talking about that. And I think I said I was going to, this is when my 29-year-old brain isn't what it used to be.
Yes.
When it was 27. So I think I said Christine is next.
Thank you, because my 29-year-old brain forgot too.
Yeah.
I had a little moment there. I was like,
I had a little moment.
It's interesting because when, like I said earlier, when I sort of came out of the gate as an artist, I think, right? So my path was very traditional, and I distinctly remember saying to myself, as I started to realize that my disability mattered to people, and particularly mattered when I was front and center, which I was a lot as a child, because like I said, I forced my way in and I had some talent. So my ability to speak up for myself and force my way in and then showcase my talent, I think got me further than it may have gotten some other disabled kids my age, right? And also I have a bigger mouth than my mother. So it was often sort of overpowering. It wasn't until it was very gradual that I realized that my body, that how my body works and my experiences mattered to people in a uncomfortable or negative way. Like it wasn't seen as an asset, right? And I remember early on in my career saying, well, I'm going to do this thing despite my disability. I'm going to be successful despite it. So I spent a lot of years, not consciously, but sort of fighting the idea of seeing my lived experience as an asset, or even understanding how my lived experience could be an asset. So it wasn't until I'd say around 2006 or so that I was like, oh, so this is going to be my way to express myself as an artist, that this is going to be what I can bring to the table in addition to all the other things that I am, that's going to make it matter, that's going to deepen my artistic practice. Because I realized, like, just the sheer nature of me, if I stood on a stage for an hour, that's still something. That's just the very nature of me standing there is representation, right? And what I do with that matters. So I think even if my practice doesn't, because I primarily am an actor, I don't always have control over the content that I'm making or participating in. So, but I've started to really realize and appreciate the fact that even if I'm in something that is not making a specific statement, I still am making a statement just by being there. So
thank you so much, Christine. That is so important, right? Because I think sometimes we don't emphasize the little things. Just being there, just showing up, just being present, right, often changes that narrative. And I'm going to come back to this idea of asset in a little bit, because I think it's really important. But before I go there, Sofiya, let's get your thoughts.
Yeah. Thank you. I mean, I just love hearing everyone's stories and their passions and how we've gotten to this place, because it's very similar in the sense of like what Christine shared, that advocacy sort of found her. And I think for all of us that might have been the case, and definitely for me too. Like I was like, oh yeah, and despite of everything, like I can just be an actor and like it's just gonna roll real easy. Yeah, that's gonna work out great, you know, even though many people told me, that's really hard to do. You should go to school for something else, right? But in my experience, which is very unique because I have dwarfism. And so dwarves and people of short stature are actually part of the history of Hollywood and the entertainment industry. And so growing up, yes, did I see myself? Sure, but it wasn't necessarily how I wanted to be seen, right? And so specifically just, something that I'm sure many people know is like Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, or you have your Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory and your Oompa Loompas. So, and even though it was always like this weird thing as a kid where I was like, I'm really excited that I'm seeing something here that I feel connected to, but deep down, it didn't feel good, and deep down, it was hurtful. And gosh, I could go on a tangent about that, but I won't. But my point is that as I moved through college and I really started to say, okay, no, there's something to this. I love this. I want to do this. I was doing a lot of documentaries with other students and realizing that when those documentaries came out and I was just sort of being me and sharing my story, that other little people like myself, I all of a sudden like had a network of little people from all over the world that said, wow, Sophia, I've never seen anyone like me before. Like, thank you for saying that. Or I relate to you because of this. And I started to realize like, whoa, that's impact, right? Like that is impact, like to a T. So fast forward, that's really how the advocacy found me, is I was like doing these sort of student films and these little, scenelets here and there, and realizing that people like me wanted to see not the dwarves, the Oompa Loompas, the elves, and all those things. They wanted to see real people that look like them and have stories and narratives that matter, right? And so I just want to say one other thing to that point is now in my career, I think it was 2016, I became the chair of the Dwarf Artist Coalition, which is a committee within Little People of America, a nonprofit organization, a volunteer-run organization, the biggest advocacy organization for people with dwarfism. And when I took on that role, everything changed for me. Like all of the sudden, I realized, oh no, this is like, now I have to make impactful work for my community. This is what I want to do. I don't have a choice anymore because that's where my heart is, And so from then, like I have curated and made space to like change those narratives and change those images of little people in Hollywood. I don't mind playing an elf or whatever, a costume, but I don't want that to be the only thing that I get hired for. I want to be seen as other things as well, because that is the truth of our existence, that, little people with dwarfism, people with disabilities, we thrive, we survive, we are part of this world, period. And so we do belong there. And yeah, so I'm trying to use my platform and my artivism as a way to share real stories of people with dwarfism, to show, talk about like those sort of discrepancies between Hollywood and the dwarf community, because it's sort of, there is a history there, which is really loaded. So I'll leave it at that.
Thank you for talking to us about image making, right? And how important those images are, and the disjuncture, right, between the way sometimes images are created and then the reality, and talking to us about the multifaceted nature of representing, right, real people's lives. Okay, so please drop your questions in. We're about 10 minutes out still, or maybe 9 minutes now. So my next question, and I'll try to squeeze two in before we get there. So piggybacking off that last question, and to some degree what Christine was talking about, often disabilities are framed, and you all have sort of talked about this a little bit in some of your initial answers, as those people who need help. Right, so it's either through a patronage model or it's through a deficit model, right? A problem that needs to be fixed, similar to sometimes other marginalized communities, depending on the marginalization. One of the things that I often say is, I have this, it's not a joke, but it's this thing that I say, like when I get up in the morning, I don't consider myself the problem, right? I don't say, well, there's the Black woman and, you know, it's her gender, it's her race, it's her whatever, right? That's the problem and needs to be fixed, right? So I imagine that's not how, right? And I always say new generations, people right across with different abilities, et cetera, right? It's not like wake up and say, I'm the problem. So let's talk a little bit about how art and the things that you're considering can be used, right, to really reframe and some more specifics, because you all have talked about this a little bit already, but to move away from, right, patronage and this deficit sort of problem needing to be fixed model. And Christine, I'll start with you.
Okay. Yeah, that's a big thing to unpack. But yeah, I mean, look, something we haven't talked about yet is numbers, right? And I always try to use the numbers to sort of shake people into reality that disabled people are this country's largest underrepresented group. We're 26% of the population. That's 1 in 4 people in this country identify as having a disability. And if you live long enough, you're going to join the club. And it's a club that
just
anybody
repeat
can,
that again. Repeat that for people out there so that they're
yes. And I'll say it a different way because it's actually it is tied to age, but also not. So disability is the only club that anybody can join at any time. So you know, and I say that obviously it has its shock value. It's sort of that light bulb moment, or that, as Oprah says, that aha moment. It's the thing that people don't think of. And so I think that the way that we are represented in film and TV and on stage is so important. And so we're not there yet. We're making progress. We are definitely making progress, especially in the last 2 or 3 years. We've been making a lot more progress. And like Sophia said, you know, because I'm primarily an actor in terms of my artistic practice, I don't always have control over what I'm doing, but in whatever space I am in, I make it known how my disability and how my lived experience and the way that I choose to frame my disability is going to affect the work, and that it is going to affect the work. I refer to myself as a disabled person first. I use identity first language, similar to, I mean, I always say, you know, it's similar to taking back the word queer, right? You don't refer to, queer folks don't refer to themselves as people with queerness, you know, right? So for me, that's a really important part of my identity as a human, but also as an artist, right? I am putting it out there. I am a disabled actor. That doesn't mean that every role that I play has to be disability specific. As a matter of fact, I don't prefer that. And that is a thing that I think that people don't understand, that when we do panels like this, people think that we're asking for opportunities to play disabled characters, and we're asking for opportunities to play characters, period, right? Because Sophia, she hasn't mentioned it.
Very important.
Sophia hasn't mentioned it yet, but she is a new mom. So like, if you look at Sophia and you don't see her as a mom, then you're missing a whole part of her lived experience, right? That she can bring to whatever project. So that's what, when I'm working on, the last thing I worked on was an audio immersive production of The Tempest. And it was just 2 weeks ago. And I got to play 2 characters in The Tempest that are completely different. And it was because the director had an absolute 150% commitment to inclusive casting. So there were folks of color across the board, and I was the representative of disability, and there were folks of other genders, and we, you know, and the the gender roles were switched. It was wonderful. And those are the kinds of the things that I like to do that literally have nothing to do with disability per se, because I'm not a symbol, I'm not a trope, I'm not, I'm just me. So yeah, I don't know if I actually answered your question.
You did. And then some. Thank you so much, Christine. Thank you for bringing up those important points, both in terms of the numbers, but then in terms of the type of representation and that important point about playing characters, right? Characters writ large. So let's move to you, Sofiya. Let's go to you next.
I'm like so lost in the conversation. I forgot what the question was. I'm like, I mean, I could repeat everything that Christine just said and then some, because yeah, but just remind me what were we touching
It's really
on?
about that reframing, right? Moving
Right.
from deficit and patronage to something, right? To thinking and reframing. Absolutely.
I mean, that's like what I'm really getting into these days as an artist. Is I'm so excited about reframing the narrative of disabled characters, disabled folks, but specifically little people in general, because we are up against a corner so harshly in this industry when it comes to so much. And I think what's important about that reframing that I just want to say is, like, exactly what Christine said, is that we are part of humanity and we are human beings. I am a new mom, and that is something I would love to bring to a role, and that would change things, because all of a sudden, let's just say I'm cast in a TV show or a film and I'm playing a mother, the world will say, oh, someone like her can be a mom? Like, because believe it or not, while I was walking around for 10 months with my baby in me, the world was like, they can't handle those things sometimes. And so it's up to Hollywood, it's up to the industry to make that change and to reframe these societal archetypes and issues that we all face. So yeah, it's just such important work to do that reframing. And personally, for me, I'm really interested in creating more positive imagery of people with dwarfism.
Thank you so much. And thank you for also talking about that sort of, right, that surprise factor that people have, right? That when real lives, as you brought up before, and the importance of that representation. So Diana, same question, really thinking about that movement away from patronage and deficit to more, and I don't even want to say more positive, I want to say real, like, right, just sort of accurate, etc. And Diana, I think you're still on mute.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah, thank you for that question, because it's been a journey for me from coming from someone when I was younger who thought about overcoming my disability despite my disability, and then coming to the journey of identifying as a disabled person. And, because people have always said, oh, you've overcome your disability, but people would never say to me, you've overcome your blackness. How wonderful. You've overcome being black. I really admire that. And I still see that framework in. I was watching the news the other day of a para-athlete, and the reporter said, you don't consider yourself disabled. And she said no. And I'm not disparaging this athlete. Everyone has the right to identify how they want. But it reminded me that disability as a cultural identity is still not part of our normalcy. It's not part of, so that's why when I speak, I say, no, I have not overcome my disability. I'm overcoming the stigmas associated with mental health, because I deal with depression and anxiety. It's the stigmas, and my art gives me a platform to break through those stigmas. My art gives me a platform. I show the two best days of my life were June 5th, 2000. The two best days of my life were the days my nephews were born. Those are by far jumping down, screaming, my older nephew gonna be 14 in a week. I'm flipping out, freaking out. One of the worst days of my life when I came home, went on Facebook and realized my friend Dan, a friend of mine, had committed suicide. One of the worst days of my life. And I share those because those have nothing to do with having cerebral palsy. Those have to do with my sister had 2 children, which opened my heart and cracked open my heart because I don't have my own kids. It cracked open my heart in ways my love for my nephew has cracked open my heart in a way I never thought could be, you know. My little nephew helped me with the audition the other day. I'm more proud of my nephew than I am about him. It was just amazing. My friend Daniel's death was devastating. It gutted me to my core when he took his life. It still does. It still does. It's still one of the most devastating things, and I hate that he's not here because he would be really proud that I'm doing this right now. He's like, hey, DJ. So, but again, those experiences are what I mean about normalizing the disability experience. I got to hug my dad for the first time in a year, you know, and a lot of us still spent a year where we couldn't hug people and couldn't gather in ways we wanted to. And those are part of the human experience that disability and the diversity of disability need to be part of. I come as a disabled Black woman, which is with cerebral palsy. There are images, there are even disability images that we don't always see. There are some that are more visible than others. So in many ways, my art is a opportunity for me to plant that visibility, and also as a director and producer, ensure that when I'm producing something, that diversity and visibility is also there.
Thank you so much, and thank you for reminding us again about what overcoming things, right? And that the sort of way in which that gets operationalized. And thank you again, of course, about talking about normalizing, right, disability, because I think this is where we are. So we have some questions from the audience. So the first question I want to, and I really like this question. I have a friend who says, what would your 8-year-old self think of yourself today? And this question fits in line with that. So what's one piece of advice you'd give to the younger generation or to a younger you? And I'll just let anyone who wants to jump in. You turn off your mic and jump in. And we have about 5 minutes. I didn't really have 5 minutes, so.
My 8-year-old self would be, your cousin is not going to marry Jermaine Jackson of the Jackson 5, so get over that. But you're going to work really hard and your dreams are going to come true, not in the way you think they are, but in the way they will. It would be totally amazing, and just go for it, because you will make your dreams come true just in the way you, not in the way you thought they would, but in the way they do come true, be really beautiful and amazing. But you're not going to meet the Jackson 5. I'm sorry, it's just not going to happen.
Thank you, those Jetsons, right? Okay, Christine, I saw you turned up your mic, or Sophie, whoever.
Yeah, I mean, I would just say, don't let anybody silence your voice once you find it, right? And once you figure out, it's about the journey, not the results. And when you find something you love, and that could change over time, right? Many times it often does. Pursue it doggedly, and don't let anybody tell you can't. Those are, platitudes for everyone, but particularly for our community.
Fantastic.
And I would say that what Christine just said, and, younger me or someone like me, bring your step stool everywhere. And it's okay. It's okay to bring your step stool everywhere. Do not be embarrassed to bring your step stool, period.
Thank you. All right, last little thing, get maybe 5, we have like 30 seconds each. Tell us something that is fun, that brings you joy, besides, integrated with your art or not. Just tell us something as we, because these have been challenging times. It's been a challenging time this year. So tell us something that, fun, joy, something, and anybody can jump in.
I'll just share that I have almost an 11-month-old son, and he is so beautiful and just the biggest joy of my life. He has dwarfism like me. So he's a mini me, literally, which is so weird to say. And this year has been very hard, but I feel very grateful that I have family and I have him. He's the light of my life right now. So, yeah.
Thank you, Sophia.
My nephew and my goddaughter.
Thank you so much, Diana. Thank you. Christine, anything?
Yeah. Diana's nephews and her goddaughter and Logan. But Sophia knows how much I love Logan. That's her son's name. And I will say, I live by myself in a tiny apartment in New York, and I have a cat, and he's sick now. So sorry, but he has been my joy.
Oh, all right. Well, thank you for sharing that. Thank you. Thank you for being here today. Thank you for sharing all that you shared. Thank you for your collaborations with one another, right? That came out in the conversation. And thank you for reminding us of all of the important ways that we can help to support you, to think about how we change multiple narratives around disability and move right out of this deficit patronage to really think about assets and, of course, the full representation of people's full lives, as you all talked about in the reality. I think now it's my time to turn it over again. Thank you to the partners. Thank you to everyone out there for being part of this discussion. I don't know about the rest of you, but this has been a stellar panel and a stellar discussion. And I hope everyone has just enjoyed it and learned a lot. It's now my time to turn it over to, I do believe, Alexis. So thank you again for joining us today. And I look forward to we all look forward to other opportunities to join one another.
And thank you, Lisa.
Thank you so much,
for
Lisa,
being an amazing
moderator, and our interpreters as well. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
To the interpreters, absolutely. And thank you, Alexis. All right, I'll stop talking.
Hello, my name is Alexis Gonzalez, and I'm the Program Associate for Audience Development Engagement at the Metropolitan Museum of Art. My pronouns are he, him. I am a Latino male with short black hair and wearing a dark gray shirt, and I am sitting in front of a white wall. Today, I'm calling in from Los Angeles, California, the land of the Tongva and Gabrielino people, and the Akja Chaman and the Huanyanyo nations who have lived and continue to live here. I also want to recognize the Tongva and Akja Chaman nations and their spiritual connection as the first stewards and the traditional caretakers of this land. Thank you to our brilliant and generous panelists and to our audience for joining us today for the 100 Years, 100 Women Conversation series hosted by Park Avenue Armory and the Metropolitan Museum of Art. All of the panels will be archived in the 100 Years, 100 Women website at 100years100women.net. We encourage you to visit our website to learn more about the 100 Years, 100 Women project, the commissioned artists and their work, and resources and related programming currently offered by our partner institutions. We will end with Our Sisters, Daughters, and Mothers, a Southeastern Woodlands contemporary women's honor song created and recorded by Martha Redbone. Thank you.
Whoa, where, hey, where, hey, where, hey, whoa, where, hey, ya, hey, yo. Whoa, where, hey, where, hey, where, hey, whoa, where, hey, ya, hey, yo. Whoa, where, hey, whoa, where, hey, where, hey, where, hey, ya, hey, yo. Whoa, where, hey, where, ya, ya, whoa, where, hey, ya, hey, yo. Whoa, where, hey, where, hey, where, hey, whoa, where, hey, ya. sisters, honor our